Well, good afternoon, everyone. I hope everyone's finding the TESC conference entertaining and educational so far. So I'd like to welcome everyone to our session this afternoon on traffic signal asset management. My name is Steve Barber. I'm with Michael Baker International, and I'll be moderating this session today. And with us, we have our two speakers here for this afternoon, Mr. Anthony Chiato of PENNDOT, and also Mr. Steve Galt of PENNDOT. Just a couple brief housekeeping items before we get started here. Please feel free to, we're gonna try to hold the questions and I'll kind of monitor them through the entire session here in the chat box and things like that. So if you have questions, please post them there. We'll watch the time, and then we can engage in the Q&A session towards the end, and to give our speakers here adequate time to get through their comments. So if you have questions or comments or anything like that, please feel free to type them in the chat box for the Q&A session, and we'll go forward from there. So with that behind us, I'd like to introduce again here this afternoon our first speaker, Mr. Anthony Chiato, who's been with PENNDOT for a little over 3.5 years. Anthony started out with the Bureau of Programming and Research after graduating from the University of Pitt at Johnstown. Anthony has been with the Traffic Signal Unit for more than 2 years, working on TSAMs, signal permits, and EPS, updating Pub 408, and testing new products and technologies for traffic signals. So with that, Anthony.
Thank you very much, Steve. I'll go ahead and pull my presentation up. As Steve said, my name is Anthony Chiato. I've been working with PENNDOT in traffic signal section, and we've been working with Michael Baker for a little over a year now on updating our processes for traffic signal maintenance and agreements in Pennsylvania. So just to kind of go over what we currently have. Currently in PA, PENNDOT reviews and issues signal permits at a district level once they're submitted by the municipalities. Municipalities have to pass a resolution and sign their signal maintenance agreements in paper, in person. Some municipalities perform their own signal maintenance, whether it's their own staff, if they have the resources, but most of them do vendor that out, and we'll see that a little bit later in the presentation. And some municipalities update their permits and they update TSAMs as they go. But overall, not as many do that as we like. Some of our goals, what do we want out of TSAMs and what do we want out of this project that we've been doing with Baker, is to verify that traffic signals are operating as permitted. We want to make sure that the traveling public in Pennsylvania is getting where they want to go as efficiently as possible and also as safely as possible while going through our corridors with signals. We want to encourage and ensure that municipalities perform their preventative maintenance. Sometimes it's hard for a municipality to justify that in their budget based on their very limited resources, but preventative maintenance is very important in making sure that catastrophic failures don't happen, and in the long run can end up saving them some money and time. We want to gain a clear line of sight and what equipment is being used, what condition it's in, and any life cycle or any issues that municipalities might have, and that can be gained by implementing that data into TSAMs. And on a state level, that'd be very important and very useful for us, because in our traffic signal section, we review and approve all of the products that go into Bulletin 15. So sometimes we do trial periods that last maybe 30, 60 days. So while we may be able to compare it to our 408, make sure that it's good to go on Bulletin 15, we don't really get to see the full life cycle of it, get to know the day in and day out of what might come across after a year, after 2 years. So having that data available to us would be, it would be great in assisting other districts, other municipalities to make sure that we can be the technical experts that we want to be when it comes to assisting with those kinds of things. And also, we want to be able to run statewide equipment screening to drive funding and programming decisions, just to make sure that we're able to balance the budget, make sure everything works out well. And to accomplish that, we want to design tools, systems, processes, anything that can help support and achieve those goals. And really, we want to use TSAMs as the catalyst for that. right now, TSAMs is being used a lot as a data repository for some photos of intersections, and really just to pull permits. Ideally, we'd like to flesh it out, be the full asset management system that it can be, and perform those day in, day out asset management functions that would be useful to our districts and for the municipalities that want to use it. So back at the very beginning of this project, fall of 2019, we conducted a TSAMs user survey. We sent the survey out via SurveyMonkey to, excuse me, to our municipal signal contacts, consultants, vendors, and signal contractors. We got roughly 300 people that replied to the survey, and we kind of have a breakout here of out of that 300 roughly who responded. So 78%, 227 people were signal representatives from municipalities, 17 were consultants, we had 9 contractors, 5 vendors, and 34 other. A majority of that other section is local police, so maybe chief of police or lieutenants, maybe in the smaller municipalities where some of the police force handles the signal responsibilities. We're going to go over some of the information we also received back from that survey. So some of the current practices we have is 81% of municipalities use contractors for some or all of their traffic signal maintenance. And this all varies. This all depends on what resources are available to that municipality, how many signals they own. But it's good to get that number back, kind of see where we stand. PENNDOT has about 1,200 municipal signal owners in the state right now. 75%, this is the fact that surprised me a little bit. 75% of those municipalities still use paper records to keep track of their permits, which in this day and age, to get everything in TSAMs or at least get everything digital, especially we started this project not in a pandemic, but now where we are now, this is probably more important than ever, kind of making that conversion over to the digital. And we think TSAMs would be a great tool for that. 22% of our respondents have tried to implement TSAMs into their own operations. Kind of routing back up to our second slide, that's not nearly as many as we'd like. We'd like TSAMs to be in a good place where all of our users can use it, it's user-friendly, make sure that they're getting the full use out of it. Some comments that we got back in the survey about TSAMs and using it in general. A lot of municipalities, vendors, contractors would like training on TSAMs. I think this is something that if you were to reach out to myself, Steve Galt, Ben Flanagan, Lee Maurice, Maurice Lee, and or Matt DePauli, I'm sure we could try to provide something, some digital training, some web training on TSAMs. There's currently user guides on the TSAMs homepage, but I'm sure this is something that we could set up. Users would like to have TSAMs more user-friendly. This is something that we're constantly working on. TSAM gets updates every couple months. We always try to throw some user-friendly updates in there along with our functionality updates and making the site easier to access. We've updated and added TSAMs access guides, which helps you go through the ECMS security process to get ECMS login info, because that's what you need in order to access TSAMs. Some of the policies that we got back, some of the comments we got back in regards to policy is that municipalities want to know what their role is in TSAMs and what they need to do, because sometimes it's a gray area going off what they currently had. They want to know what they need to do and how they need to do it. They want to have a reason to actually use TSAMs. And that's probably one of the biggest thing about this project is we want to give them a tool that they're going to want to use and not something that we have to force them to use. The more people that use TSAMs, though, the more feedback we can get, the better we can make the program. And so the more people we pull in, the more feedback we get, the better we can make the program. And I think that in and of itself will help start to incentivize people to use it. And they want to make sure that all the photos, all the data, the permit plans, everything that's in TSAMs now is up to date. So that way, if you're, for example, if you have to go through maybe you're going through your paper records, maybe your current permit got lost somewhere and you have to pull a permit that's 20, 30 years old that you can't really tell where anything needs to go or something's been majorly updated. We want to make sure that everything that's in TSAMs is up to date and it's going to be good for the user. One of the questions we asked during the survey was, are you familiar with TSAMs? It's a pretty broad question, but you can kind of see here that our target audience is the municipal representatives, and a vast majority of them were not familiar with TSAMs. As that one slide said, only 22% have tried to implement it. So this is something we try to fix, but you can also kind of see that a majority of consultants were familiar with it, and all the vendors and all the contractors that got back to us were familiar with it. So this kind of helps guide our language when we try to make policies and updates as to who our audience is. We want to make sure that everybody's involved, everyone's working on this together. So this question really helped nail that down. Just to kind of visualize some of the things we went over, going over and clarifying roles and responsibilities. This is going to be handled by mainly TSAM's policy. Right now we have an interim policy that pretty much states that the department is responsible for permits, and the municipalities are going to be responsible for taking photos, making sure the photos are of the cabinet or in TSAMs and are up to date. Then this will also be clarified in 191 revisions and by the TE 160 agreement. Another part of the project is to streamline TE 160s and the traffic signal agreement, but we'll go over that later. Increase TSAM's user friendliness. Again, we try to do this on a monthly basis with our updates, fixing bugs, adding in new functionality, making sure that our users are able to navigate the site and get to the data that they need. And this comes across in some of the user documents that we put up to help people go through step by step what they need to upload, how they do it. And then we also want to remove barriers for some of our vendors, some of our contractors. So we've implemented a TSAMs guest access, which we'll go over a little bit later. So the interim policy, the big goal for a lot of this project and moving forward, and it's going to take a while, but our long-term goal is to make sure we want everything in TSAMs. So we want TSAMs to be the one-stop shop for traffic signals in Pennsylvania. So we want to have it be an asset management tool. Permits are in there. You can do condition rating, so on and so forth. But for the short term, we understand that municipalities are working with a limited budget, limited resources, and a lot of this is going to be new. So short term, we just want permits and cabinet photos to be in TSAMs, and then we'll go from there. We're going to work with municipalities, work with our districts, make sure we can try to get there. And of course, we're encouraging more than the bare minimum. The more people use it, the more they get used to it, they might be able to expand more of the current functionality that's in there. So more than the minimum is always encouraged, but for now, the big thing is permits and cabinet photos. And just to kind of drive it home, this is really all we're asking for. The municipality is going to decide to make a modification. They'll go ahead and make the modification to their cabinet, to their signals. And then all we ask is they upload a cabinet photo to TSAMs, make sure it's up to date anytime they're at their intersection. And I'd like to credit Jennifer Warner from Baker for these the wonderful hand drawings here for this presentation. So just to kind of visualize the process, the municipality would design the permits with their consultants or their staff if they have it. Those permits will then go for review and approval at the district level. And then the municipality would handle the construction or the modifications at their intersection. And then at the field inspection, the municipality would take a picture of their cabinet, upload to TSAMs. And then from there, the as-built would get created and then submitted to PENNDOT for approval. And from there, the permits would be uploaded into TSAMs and we would have our updated permits. Going back to some of the TSAMs updates that we had implemented to start to accommodate some of these updates and changes to policy, we have the guest user login. Right there, we have a little snippet of the TSAMs homepage where you can see a returning guest and first-time guest. by signing up as a guest, this allows you to add components. You can also add documents and photos to TSAMs. Now, as a security measure, none of that information is added to the live TSAMs database until it's reviewed by someone at the PENNDOT district office. So that's one security measure that we took in order to make sure that no one can abuse the guest login feature. The newest addition to TSAMs comes in the form of the signal owner module. This is a user-friendly update that we made and something that will help with the TE160 agreements. This will display all the signals that are in a, so whenever a signal owner goes into TSAMs and they see this module, they just have to make 1 or 2 clicks, and that will bring up a list of all the signals that are within their municipality based on what information is assigned to their account. And this will also, like I said, tie into the new TE160s. Some future TSAMs updates that we want to make. These are probably a little further off in the future, might need some policy to go along with them. But we want to be able to create some component condition tools, whether it's more guides or how-tos, some recommendations on how to rate signal components. We want to be able to assist municipalities and districts in doing this. And then within TSAMs itself, to kind of go along with that, update it to have drop-down menus or some form of data field where they can input that, and then TSAMs could start to maybe track that data, where it could say this component has been at this condition level for this long, might be time for maintenance, or this condition level has been the lowest for this long, you might need to look to replace. So we would like to get TSAMs to that asset management level, instead of just being a data repository. And the asset management tools to track components, this again ties back to the at the state level, being able to look at the life cycles of different components, making sure that we at the state level are able to support our districts and municipalities and help them and be able to approve products that will serve them in the future. And then getting close to the end here, we have the TE160 agreements. We're trying to streamline these to make it easier, because as I said earlier, currently, whenever a municipality wants to add a signal, they have to fill out a TE160, get the permit approved, pass a resolution for it. What we want to do is change some of the language, streamline the process, where the TE160 would be signed, a new TE160 would be signed for a municipality, and then that would cover all of the signals that they have in TSAMs. So as long as TSAMs is up to date, that TE160 would be like a blanket approval for all of them, where they can add and remove without having to pass a new resolution each time. So that we feel like that would greatly streamline the process, make it easier on them. And then in the back end, we would include some of that language for the TSAM requirements. Moving forward, some of the key things that we're going to be working on, TSAM's policy itself. Currently, the interim policy is in there, but moving forward, we want to make sure we're working with our districts, working with municipalities, making sure that whenever we implement new policy, it's something that they'll be able to handle. Make sure everything is in line. Pub 191 revisions. We actually just got them back from FHWA, and Steve Galt will be going over those in his presentation, but we got those back and they'll be going out soon. The TE160 agreement, we're going to be sending letters out to municipalities within the next couple months, kind of giving them an idea of what's going on, the process that we're looking forward to getting them signed, and then back to us. And then after that, after they've had enough time to ask any questions, go over it with their districts, go over it with us, we'll distribute the agreements and then look to track the process and status of getting those back from municipalities, filing those and making sure we have them in line for them. TSAMs updates are always going to be happening. That's something we're always working on, making sure we have functionality in place for our users. TSAM help documents are a new thing that were part of this project, where we've implemented, based on the interim policy, some documents for the district users, municipal users, and we also have TSAM guest access documents to help with the guest user functionality, and as well as documents to help get logged on to the ECMS get information for ECMS access in case you need full access for TSAMs. So with that, Steve will be taking questions at the end, but I'll be happy to look at them, and I'm going to hand it back off to Steve.
All right, thanks. Thanks, there, Anthony. And we did have several questions that came in here in the Q&A box, so I'll go ahead and read those off. The first one is, TSAMs have limited accessibility to everyone except PENNDOT and municipalities and the reps. If so, what are those limitations? Basically, who can access TSAMs other than the municipalities and their representatives? Is there anybody else that can look at the TSAMs data?
I believe, Steve, the consultants have access to it, right? And yeah.
So and I think this kind of goes with the next question, which was whether the consultants will be able to upload documents. So currently a guest user can upload documents for any signals that are in construction. And for other signals, if the consultant is associated with the municipality, they can also upload documents. One of the features that was added earlier this year is a consultant can actually request access for a specific municipality. If the municipality is not registered in TSAMs, that request will come to us at PENNDOT central office, and we can work with the municipality, make sure that they're okay with it, and then approve it on their behalf, which would provide that consultant with access.
Okay, thank you, gentlemen. Next question that came in, sort of a third question here. Some time ago, one of our municipalities was upgraded to a first-class township. Though I've asked for the municipality number to be changed in TSAMs, as of today, it's still not changed. What is the proper procedure for getting this change made?
I believe they have to have their information updated through the ECMS folks. I think that's assigned to their ECMS account, but I could be wrong on that one.
Yeah, I think that's one that we are aware of. There's some mainframe that TSAMs is pulling from that we've been trying to figure out how to get that fixed.
Okay, good. The next question that came in, I've noticed that when looking at TSAMs, it seems District 6 has really taken a strong step in uploading the docs into TSAMs, but I see very limited docs from the other districts. Is there a move to push the other districts to add more signal-related content?
There's always a push to get other districts and everyone to be uploading those documents. Sometimes it has to be champion-driven within the district, but we're always pushing and looking for documents to be uploaded to TSAMs, because that, as I said, that we want that to be our one-stop shop for signals in Pennsylvania. So there's always a push for that. All
right, great. Well, Anthony, hopefully you can do that virtually now here in the near term.
Yeah.
The next question that came in, I've been told by a few districts to request signal permit plans directly from them since TSAMs is outdated. Is it on the municipality to update TSAMs once a permit has been added/revised, or is it PENNDOT?
Well, under the interim policy, it would be PENNDOT's responsibility to, once that permit is submitted to them and they approve it, it would be PENNDOT's responsibility to update it in TSAMs.
Okay, thank you. And the last question we got, it looks like, is would a TE 160 still be needed after the blanket one is signed?
As long as the information in TSAMs is matched up and is correct and up to date, then no.
You're okay, you're still reading yours, Anthony.
I'm sorry. Let me check my mic.
No, we can hear you fine.
Oh, okay.
Yep. So I'm sorry, could you repeat that? The question was, would a TE 160 still be needed after the blanket one is signed?
It would be, the TE 160 would come back to us and then we'd keep it on file. But then if everything in TSAMs is up to date, then maybe I'm misreading the question. Is it, they wouldn't have to pass a resolution to add that signal to their list of signals as long as it's in TSAMs, then that would be fine. They wouldn't need to sign a new one.
Okay. Okay. Hopefully that answered the question that came in. If not, okay. Well, Anthony, thank you very much, sir. That looks like, again, we have the questions for now. If anyone has other ones, please feel free to add them in the Q&A box. But I would like to move forward. Our next presenter here this afternoon is Mr. Steve Galt. And I will note that Steve's title for this session was not a mistake. Steve is very well aware of the chronology. But Steve is his intro, strives to ensure smooth mobility throughout Pennsylvania with new approaches to using technology to safely and efficiently move humans. As PENNDOT's Chief of TSMO, Arterials and Planning, Galt uses his passion by overseeing traffic signals, arterial operations, and planning for deployment of TSMO solutions across the state. Galt has been testing the limits of traffic signal controller for several years, including building his own software to analyze controller log data. And I can also let everyone know that Steve Galt regularly did travel time delays back when he was driving in and out of downtown Harrisburg. So with that, Steve, if you'd like to take it forward.
All right. Well, thank you for the introduction. And maybe to start things off here, instead of me having the answers, I'll say the answers and see if you can come up with the questions. So we're going to do a little bit of an interactive part to start, and play a little Jeopardy in honor of Alex Trebek. So our category for today is things that require preventative maintenance but don't come with an owner's manual. So we'll start with the $200 question, and the first question is, due for its one-year checkup today, this prevented Steve Galt from attending the Traffic Engineering and Safety Conference last year. So feel free to type answers into the chat box and let me know what you think is an answer for that. Unfortunately, the $200 is not a real prize, so there's no cash benefits. I lost the chat box. Here we go. All right, so we see a couple people that got it right. The correct answer is the birth of a child. So we'll go to $400, and the answer is, if you ignore maintaining this, it will make you stop more than you go. So anybody that wants to try the question for that one in the chat box? See one. What is a traffic signal? So yes, so now we know that traffic signals are like babies. They need periodic checkups. They don't come with an owner's manual. They sometimes cry and wake you up in the middle of the night with an emergency. But with proper parenting, you can keep your traffic signals healthy. So in the introduction, we'll talk about trying to bring our traffic signal maintenance in Pennsylvania into the 21st century. We still have time to get there before we go into the next century. So let's see what we can do. So historically, traffic control was a local responsibility with police officers stationed within intersections to direct traffic. So in Pennsylvania, this has remained a local responsibility as electric traffic signals replaced police officers. And all the traffic signals are still owned by the local municipalities here in Pennsylvania, including traffic signals on state highways. We have over 13,800 traffic signals in Pennsylvania, which are owned by 1,199 different municipalities. 3/4 of those municipalities have less than 10 traffic signals. 297 have an only child, but I don't know if they're spoiled. At the other end of the spectrum, the city of Philadelphia has more signals than 905 other municipalities combined, with almost 3,000. So I hope I never have 3,000 kids. With many municipalities that own that small number of signals, the staffing for a proper maintenance program can be challenging. And Anthony mentioned earlier the survey we did last year that 80% of municipalities indicate they use contractors for their traffic signal maintenance rather than in-house staff. And even if they would have in-house staff working on signals, with only a few signals, those individuals are likely juggling competing priorities for their time. So if we rewind to 2005, a little bit closer to the turn of the century, the Transportation Advisory Commission completed a report reviewing Pennsylvania's policies and practices for traffic signals. One of the areas where progress has been lagging is a holistic approach to signal management, which directly relates to that fragmented ownership that I talked about. Even without owning traffic signals, PENNDOT can still take a more proactive role in promoting best practices and providing tools to local governments to consistently administer their traffic signal programs. And I like to say that PENNDOT's role with traffic signals is kind of similar to the role that the Federal Highway Administration plays with state DOTs, with FHWA being a resource for information and recommendations. So then coming into, how can we provide that guidance? So Pennsylvania's vehicle code really establishes a partnership between PENNDOT and municipalities for traffic signals. Municipalities must obtain PENNDOT approval before installing or modifying a traffic signal, which is accomplished with a permitting process. The permit requires municipalities to maintain and operate the signal in accordance with the permit that PENNDOT issues and PENNDOT's maintenance standards. However, there's often minimal operational oversight at the state level after the permit is issued and the signal is installed. Historically, PENNDOT built traffic signals and handed them over to local municipalities with a permit, but without much guidance on what to do next. Like having a baby and leaving the hospital without an owner's manual. And I can speak from experience and say that they don't come with an owner's manual, and fortunately there's a second parent that's better than I am. So PENNDOT's maintenance standards are contained in what we refer to as Publication 191. And Anthony mentioned that we're finishing an update, and that was circulated for public comment in this past summer. You may have seen it when it was out for review that time. We're just putting the finishing touches on it now. We got the approval from FHWA, and really just want to make sure that once we have this new the new agreement process, we want to make sure that we have the template fully vetted with our office of chief counsel before we make the publication live. But I just got the confirmation on that yesterday, so hopefully that will be available as an official publication in the very near future. So the goal of the new edition is really to be that owner's guide for traffic signals and how to best maintain them, how to best operate them, what are the good practices that should be undertaken. So how do we keep our traffic signals happy, free from crying, or in signals terminology, being on flash, ensure they can breathe, which is having a nice air filter, increase their life expectancy because parents are not supposed to bury their kids. So some of the things that we've done is we reorganized and streamlined the publication. It is not always happens with a government document. It's actually fewer pages than the 2010 edition, and we really tried to focus on providing meaningful information and not having a lot of fluff. We have new content on the municipal traffic signal agreements, and those agreements will make it simpler. There was a question earlier, and the goal is that we want to get that agreeing to the terms out of the way once, and then have all the new signals in the municipality comply with that, so that the process of applying for a new signal will be much simpler. We may still have a form that's called a TE 160, but it's going to be taken down to one page. It'll be a lot simpler to do, and won't necessarily need to go through a municipal meeting if the municipality authorizes that when they do the original agreement. So again, trying to streamline that process, make it more user-friendly as we saw in some of those survey results. We also want to talk about program benchmarking and some of those national best practices and how municipalities that own signals can evaluate where they are and determine where they want to be relative to what they can realistically accomplish. And the third is asset management. Anthony talked a lot about that with TSAMs, and that's really the focus of our asset management efforts, and ultimately getting TSAMs to be more than just an inventory system, but actually make it a full asset management system that can help with the decision making and budgeting for incremental improvements, so that there aren't any surprises that need to be funded. We also updated the content on the maintenance checklists and the scheduling timeline, and broke things into primary and secondary components. So the ITE and the National Operations Center for Excellence published the Traffic Signal Benchmarking and State of the Practice Report last December, which is the next evolution to the prior 3 National Traffic Signal Report Cards. And this document incorporates the Capability Maturity Model framework into that benchmarking to connect the activities to the program goals and objectives. The advantage of the CMM framework is it allows agencies to establish a realistic target. So level 4 may not be the optimal choice in some cases. Since most of Pennsylvania's agencies only maintain a few traffic signals, this allows the municipality to align its capabilities with its needs. And in the publication, we further break out the capabilities for each level within each of the 6 dimensions of the capability maturity model in the appendix. Meaningful metrics are central to implementing performance-based planning and management processes. FHWA uses the G-cost model for this. At the highest level are the goals, what we want to achieve, and at the bottom are the tactics or the specific actions that we're going to take that will eventually help us meet those goals. Along the way, we establish programs and objectives, which can vary based on the context in which we are functioning. So goals are the feel-good statements that might be part of a platform for elected officials or those in policy-making positions. They are simple, so they can be easily understood by the general public. However, goals don't tell us what we need to do to achieve utopia. At PENNDOT, our TSMO program has the goal of a less congested, more reliable network. So when we get into the objectives level, PENNDOT's recommending the objectives that are shown here, which have been adapted from presentations that I've seen from Eddie Curtis and Rick Denny with the Federal Highway Administration. And we organize them into 4 categories. The first one being safety, and always very important that we want to assign right away safely, because that's how we prevent crashes. The second one is operations, which can really be broken out based on the flow regime, whether it's a light flow, uncongested, but approaching congestion, and then congested or oversaturated flow. And then also we have different things depending if we're at an intersection context or a network context. We also have organizational objectives that relate to how we provide customer service and comply with policies and standards. And then we have maintenance objectives, which get into keeping our infrastructure in a state of good repair and making sure that we're minimizing how much we have to spend maintaining that equipment over its life cycle. And really, that's one of the big goals with the maintenance discussion that we're having now is how to minimize that cost, but do it in an effective way. So when we look at how those objectives tie into the strategies, the tactics, and the targets, for each of those objectives in the publication, we identified strategies and implementation tactics. In this example, the objective is to assign right-of-way safely. The strategy is to design the intersection and signal operation in a manner that can serve all users safely, avoiding conflicts which would result in crashes. Tactics are the tools that are in our toolbox, which may be applicable to a particular situation. Safety is based on physical infrastructure, timing, and phasing. Measurement targets should be quantifiable with the ability to determine whether the target is met or not. Meeting the target should then result in meeting the objective. As another example, progression is the strategy to achieve smooth network flow. Our primary tool is coordination, which we achieve through controller settings and communications with a central system. Success can be measured with targets for bandwidth, stops, and side street delay. So now we'll shift gears into maintenance, and we categorize maintenance into 3 categories. The first 2 I'll talk about here, and then get to the third one. The first two are preventative and response maintenance, and the third one is operational maintenance. So preventative maintenance is activities that minimize the probability of one or more components of a traffic signal from malfunctioning. It's similar to going to the doctor for a checkup. For us humans, these start from birth with scheduled appointments every few weeks and then months for babies. So I think everyone or a lot got the question right, that the reason I wasn't here is I wasn't at the conference last year as I was preparing for this presentation and had to have a baby to make sure that I could do some preventative maintenance examples. So if you do good preventative maintenance, it'll minimize the risk of failures that require emergency response maintenance. And we can think of proper preventative maintenance as keeping your traffic signals happy. But a lack of preventative maintenance results in increased emergencies that require immediate response and can divert attention from other necessary tasks. It can be a vicious cycle. More response maintenance means less time to spend on preventative maintenance, which then means more response maintenance and even less time to spend on preventative maintenance. So switching gears for a moment, we can also compare preventative maintenance to the scheduled maintenance that you would do for a car. So it's done on a schedule which is designed to prevent the equipment from failing. So for example, an oil change may be recommended every 3 months, regardless of whether the oil is in good shape or not. It's recommended to change it on that schedule. The air filter should be replaced every year in a car, for example. So the preventative maintenance may include replacement of some of those consumables in the case of a signal like a cabinet air filter that are done according to a schedule. But preventative maintenance really doesn't include repairing or replacing components which are damaged or otherwise in need of work, but could be observed as needing that work due to what occurs during the preventative maintenance check. Again, using the car analogy, if the mechanic sees your tire tread is low, replacing the tire isn't part of the preventative maintenance and would be a separate thing for which they would want to get authorization before they do it. Similarly, with a signal, we would want to follow a prescribed list of checks, and some of those may lead to more work, but that should be confirmed and discussed with the signal owner before proceeding. And by sticking to that list, then it makes it much easier to budget the preventative maintenance work. You know that every 6 months you're going to do this, every 12 months you're going to do that. So it's really important to keep that on schedule. Sometimes it's not something that you have to have it on schedule to the day. If we're going with that, I need to go to the doctor in about 31 minutes when the baby hits a year old, but it should be relatively close to those schedules. So for each one of the maintenance activities in preventative maintenance, we categorize these in the new publication 191 based on the categories that we use in publication 408 for construction items to try to maintain some consistency and make it easier to find things. So we have categories for the structural supports, the controller assembly, the system and communication, electrical distribution, signal heads, detection, advanced technology, and signs and pavement markings. So if you're a student of Pub 408, you'll see a lot of those in the 950 series of specifications. And for each one of those categories, we have a long checklist of items that we have scheduled, whether it should occur at a 6-month interval or a 12-month interval. And using that, we can really schedule these things out. So many of the items that we've added to the checklist since the 2010 edition are reflecting new technologies, and there's some listed here, especially with some of the newer detections. There's different types of activities that we need to do to make sure that they're functioning properly. A lot of equipment now, the firmware is upgradable, so we want to make sure those are working properly. Connectivity with central systems, fallback scenarios with different types of operation, all those things are newer technologies that we need to pay attention to. So now moving into response maintenance, there's a couple situations where response maintenance can be required. The first is one or more components fails, causing malfunction or unapproved operation. We could also have crashes or inclement weather that cause equipment failure. And finally, we may have repairs to address issues from the preventative maintenance check. So kind of similar to that tire tread example I talked about earlier. The response maintenance requires staff and equipment to be accessible at all times in case of emergencies. The response intervals are dependent upon the criticality of the component and the time of day. Longer response times are allowable for the secondary components and during non-business hours. Temporary repairs restore the signal to safe operation until final repairs can be completed. At a minimum, the signal should be set to flashing mode, and the signal cannot be left dark without alternate traffic control methods. The final repairs would restore the signal to the approved operation in accordance with the traffic signal permit. Additional time may be allowed on a case-by-case basis for reasons such as weather conditions, component fabrication constraints, or equipment availability. So the preventative maintenance checks may result in some more significant actions to be taken, which would then become scheduled work. And I want to make a distinction between emergency response maintenance and scheduled response maintenance, because when you're doing a contract, make sure that you're considering that some work is not, needs to be done, but it can wait until it can be scheduled and not result in somebody dropping everything to do it immediately. So that should be at a potentially lower cost. And also consider that there's cases where the temporary repairs can be made, especially with some of the more expensive components, specifically the structures. The photos on the right side here, the top one shows some corrosion that was happening in the pole, and the bottom shows a temporary repair that was made to extend the life of that structure without needing to replace the whole thing. So I'll highlight that one of the areas we've seen a lot of issues is at the pole base, and really want to focus on that during the preventative maintenance. That's an area where if the foundation gets buried and water collects, that can really cause a lot of corrosion. And if you saw the pictures on the last slide of where we've seen signal pole failures, a lot of those have occurred at that base point. So the third category is operational maintenance, which can include the timing and phasing changes that to deal with changes in traffic patterns. It could be bringing the signal into conformance with current standards, and it may also involve relocating equipment, which has been repeatedly hit during crashes. PENNDOT's recommendation is to review the operations on a regular schedule, such as every 2 to 3 years, and include the people that do the preventative and response maintenance and the traffic engineer representing the signal owner in those discussions, because they can each have a different perspective on, current standards or things that have been maintenance issues repetitively in the past. So some examples of things that can occur are visor damage, visibility problems, obstructions to pedestrian push buttons, knockdowns, and detector alignment. Those are all things where relocating equipment may help prevent those from recurring. And operational maintenance can also include what we refer to as design modifications. So the example here is showing upgrading from 8-inch to 12-inch signals and using retroreflective yellow borders on the back plates. So when signal upgrades are undertaken, there's several things that we identify as current best practices that should be included. A couple examples are modifying left turn phasing and incorporation of flashing yellow arrow, pedestrian countdown timers, eliminating blind clearance left turn phasing with no yellow arrow, adding back plates with retroreflective borders, adding overhead street name signs, and upgrading signs to current standards. Another item which can be a newer concern is ADA compliance, and we want push buttons to be close to the curb and the beginning of the crosswalk, but that often puts them in conflict with the turning paths of larger vehicles. So that's something that should be evaluated as part of the operational review, and if the conflict can't be completely avoided, try to make sure that the stub pole is breakaway and can be easily reinstalled if it is hit. One thing that we've seen is a good practice is when there's pole mounted signals, the photo on the right here, if that signal was moved over to the other side of the pole, so it's away from the path of turning vehicles, it might help with preventing those visors from being clipped. So Anthony talked a lot about asset management, and I'll just hit on a couple things here, but the documentation of maintenance activities within an asset management system is really a key part of a successful traffic signal program, especially to achieve those maintenance objectives that are shown at the bottom here. Standardizing the platform and structure of this data across multiple municipalities and statewide can provide equal access to the various stakeholders that support the municipality's traffic signal program, including MPOs and PENNDOT, which may provide funding for upgrading those signals. So the municipality would also benefit by having better data from which to develop future budgets for the traffic signal program, both for annual maintenance activities and for longer term capital upgrades. And I can never miss an opportunity to give a plug for TSAMs there. So we're really trying to make that a system that does all this, and we look forward to any feedback on how to continue to improve that going forward. So to summarize a few key points, keep your traffic signals healthy by performing preventative maintenance on a scheduled basis. Plan for the unplanned. Have staff or contractors on call to provide 24/7 response to emergencies. Where responsibilities are shared across multiple agencies, ensure that those are clearly documented. And good record keeping is always critical. Electronic records are easier to find, more easily accessible, and less susceptible to damage. And finally, your job description doesn't include preventing homelessness for rodents, so it's okay to kick them out of your signals. So with that, I will turn back over to the moderator and we can do some more questions.
All right, all good stuff, Steve. And obviously, if we can take as good care of our children as you do your signals, we should be in good shape, right? So a couple Q&A questions that came in here is first one is, first off, does your wife enjoy having traffic controller decorations in the house? Very important.
She's never asked about that. I put them up high so she can't reach them, and I guess that keeps me out of trouble.
Okay, good answer. Good answer. Another question: when do you see TSAMs evolving from a signal inventory database to the true asset management system that provides information on asset condition, rating, and performance objectives?
So one of the things that there's a couple different approaches we're taking to building that into the system. One of the things we realize is trying to have TSAMs be that system for everybody is a very big task to undertake. And we've decided that we're also tracking our ITS devices in TSAMs, and because those are ones that we as PENNDOT own, we're going to start with those and try to build a system. We're working on that now to help do the same thing for our ITS devices and use the lessons learned from that to then work with all of the stakeholders for traffic signals and try to implement that on the signal side. That is part of our long-term plan, but we want to try to do it in an organized way that will make it the most successful.
Okay, great. A question that came in on the chat section here, actually. Panel or attendee asked the question: a year ago, I came across a signal where it seems like the railroad preemption wasn't working properly at a state highway intersection. I contacted the municipality, but they didn't acknowledge my email. How does PENNDOT ensure that safety concerns like these are properly addressed by the municipality?
That's a great question, and that's one of the reasons that we wanted to have the new traffic signal agreement process in place. So with and we didn't really get into the kind of the background on that, but Act 89 provided some new provisions for PENNDOT to enforce maintenance of traffic signals, and that's why we want to have these agreements in place, because that allows us to use those tools. And again, our goal is not to penalize people, but to make sure that we have a process that we can follow that leads to a successful outcome. So when we have those pieces in place, that'll give us the tools to follow up. And if the municipality isn't responsive, then there's a procedure that's outlined in Act 89 to, eventually, if there's still no resolution, PENNDOT can do the work and withhold liquid fuels funds from the municipality for it. We would certainly hope that it never comes to that, but that option is there in Act 89.
Okay, good. That looks like the questions and the chat questions we got in now. Certainly to everyone who's in attendance, if there are additional questions after this session's over, you can email your questions to tesc@psu.edu. And with that, I'd like to thank Anthony and Steve for your time here this afternoon. A great session and a good opportunity to bring everyone up to date to all the hard work that you guys are doing there at Central Office for the Commonwealth. So with that, I hope everyone has a happy and safe holiday season. So thank you.